Hi, kids. Welcome to another week of Just a Game on the Nation Network. My name is Rob Kerr. I trust you know whom you are. Appreciate you coming back and joining us here today as we get set to do another. I'm excited about this week. We got a couple of twists and turns in it. I'm excited about some of the topics we're going to get to. Obviously, the local hockey heroes are an issue, and we will dive in there with both feet. But we've also got lacrosse in this city. We'll be talking to Mike Bordy, a friend of mine for a long, long time, going on 2 decades now. General manager of the Roughnecks is going to join us a little later on. Ryan Pike, the editor of FlamesNation.ca. We'll talk to him about the local hockey heroes. Just a reminder, as always, we are broadcasting live from Treaty 7 territory, and it remains somewhat, I guess, of a sticking point for a couple of people on the old Instagram and other social places. They're still not quite happy that we talk about the fact that this is an inclusive and welcoming place, and all who enjoy sports are welcome here, regardless of gender or age or sexuality or anything like that. This is a safe place. We're glad you're here. Hope you had a good weekend. One of the things that in my journey over the last year or so, I realized that we've all got something. We're all battling something. It was a little up and down this weekend, but you know what? It's not as egregious as it used to be. You know that you're going to have days like that. So if you're, as my good friend John Short once, not once, he said it all the time. If you're down a quart, hopefully we can help you refill a little bit here today. Hopefully we'll raise your spirits. This is probably the thing that raised my spirits the most. A week ago, we were hoping to have Kelsey Snow, the wife of Chris Snow, who's battling ALS, assistant general manager of the Calgary Flames. She was going to join us, come on the program, talk a little bit about Snowy Strong, talk about her podcast, just talk about her family living their lives so publicly to try and draw attention and support and the research that's necessary to defeat ALS. Unfortunately, Kelsey couldn't come because Chris was back in the hospital. It's been a tough couple 6 months, and we'll throw this up here. If this doesn't bring you a lot of joy, I don't know what will. Chris, who was in real rough shape in the fall, was back on the ice with his daughter this past weekend skating. If this isn't something that puts a little life back in your cheeks and makes you feel good about what we're doing here and people, I don't know what will. So really happy to see Chris back out on the ice skating with his daughter. And by the way, Kelsey will be our guest a week from today. Next Monday, she will join us in studio, and we will have that conversation. And I've heard from a lot of you. I think a lot of people were understood completely why she wasn't here last Monday, but definitely want to hear that interview, want to have that conversation. So really looking forward to that. Speaking of big weekends for Calgarians, a tip of the hat to my dear friend, Amy Bontorin, business manager of the Calgary Hitmen. A tip of my hat to my dear friend, Brent Gibbs, director of retail for the Calgary Hitmen. A tip of the hat to Cassandra Vilgrain and the rest of the staff of the Calgary Hitmen. On Saturday afternoon, they honored Bret Hart with a Forever a Hitman and the raising of his banner. It was spectacular. It looked spectacular. They did an outstanding job. I love the banner. Didn't know what direction they were going to go with the photo, but it's prime Bret. Looks good. It's the one I hope they would use. And that banner rightfully now hanging up in the Saddle Dome rafters, not only for his contributions to the major junior team or the Western League team. I'm probably the last person that calls it major junior, but the Western League team that bears his name, but also what he's done for our city as an ambassador and bringing attention to Calgary, his family, all of those sort of things. It was really, really, really well done. The jersey looked good. Everything about it looked good. I know Dallas Kitt and her crew too over there. There's a lot of people that were involved. Give a little credit to my pal Brett Kenworthy as well, who took a lot of photos, and I saw those circulating. The game itself we'll just pass on by, shall we? The game itself will just pass on by, but the event prior and the event after with the wrestling on the ice, it just looks spectacular. very Calgary thing. Very proud of the fact that now other franchises are doing the same thing and taking advantage and doing their own games and having wrestling events. And that's really cool. That's what it's supposed to be. From the old show, I'll dig out an oldie but a goodie. There's 6 original ideas. Everything's an offshoot of those. So, borrowing, tweaking, changing, grabbing, all of those sort of things. That's what happens in sports. So really excited to see that. But really, for me this weekend, the positives were to see the pictures of Chris and have him back home with his family and participating, and Brett getting getting his due. Quite honestly, getting his due. The local hockey heroes since last you and I spoke have played 2 games, one of which was a 3-1 setback on Friday to the Anaheim Ducks, in which they were, for the second consecutive home game, booed off the ice. That game is, you can say that could cost them the season. You could say it was a nail in the coffin, but let's look at the numbers today, shall we? Currently tied with the Nashville Predators, behind the Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champions, who are in the second wildcard spot. Nashville, 3 games in hand, tied with the Flames. And the Avs are 5 points up on Calgary with 3 games in hand. Again, I'm no math wizard, but I don't like those numbers. But last night, the Calgary Flames came out, played a team on the second half of a back-to-back, played a team which was putting in a young, untested goalie, which has been their kryptonite all season long. I think the numbers bear that out, but I thought the Flames were, full marks for a complete 60-minute home effort and a 5-1 win. Really like the game of Jacob Markstrom right now. Too little, too late. I think we can have that conversation. Sure. I think that's a fair conversation to have. But I also think for him to go through this entire season without showing a little of last season's form would have been difficult. But the fact that right now he's playing the way he played most of last year, at least he has for the last couple of weeks, that's a good sign. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic spell. It's none of those sort of things. But for him mentally to get back, these games mean something for Calgary. And the last thing I think you can say in the past 4 or 5 games is that the goaltending has cost them. And unfortunately, that was a narrative that bugged this team, plagued this team for a long time. I thought one of the things that was jumped out at me, and I'm just bringing it up, and there's always a danger of coaching through television. I think I'd feel more comfortable with this opinion if I had been in the building watching from above, or in the building watching from, the bench area, whatever. This is just strictly an observation from watching on television. But particularly the Minnesota games and even the Anaheim game, outshot Anaheim, outchanced Anaheim. But Anaheim took a big page out of the Minnesota Wild's playbook. And boy, they collapsed right on top of Gibson, and exactly what Minnesota did. And probably I wouldn't noticed it, probably wouldn't have said anything, except last night watching Ottawa, that's not how they defend. Ottawa would send, the wingers up to the points. It would create some space. It would create separation. There was lanes and pathways to the net, 2-man lease. If I was, the Senators and watching video today, I wonder if I would have changed my, I would have changed my defensive structure. That's not how the game is played. You have an identity, you play to that identity. But it really struck me on Friday that Anaheim just put everybody, 5, loaded them right in that home plate area, right below the hash marks for the most part. Flames tried to get bodies in front. It just was so hard to get pucks through. It was so hard to thread passes through. And the reality is the skill of this team, I don't think overcomes that. They need to do something to draw bodies out. They need to do something to create those lanes. I think they want to try moving the puck from board to board. I think they want to try and get the defenseman chasing. Anaheim, Minnesota weren't doing that. Then you're left with trying to pick corners. Then you're left with trying to make skill plays. And as the old guy in the room, And I love Tyler Toffoli and what he brings to you. I love Kadri and what he brings to you. But these guys are not elite shooters. They're not Jerome McGinley. They're not, Mike Camilleri. I could be talked off of this thought. I don't even think they're. I'm not even sure they're Matt Tkachuk. Tkachuk used to drive everybody nuts around here, right? Because he'd try to go between the legs and he'd try the sharp angle stuff. And we all went, guffaw, guffaw, guffaw. He's lucky he plays in this era. He would never get away with that with a coach like Daryl Sutter. And, he's still doing it last year. But I go back to the overtime winner in Nashville. And you guys all know the one I'm talking about, between the legs. This is just not a skilled group like that from top to bottom. It may develop that. Pelche may develop that. I think Huberdeau's an elite passer. But when they play these teams that collapse to the front, it just seems to bounce off the side of the net or low percentage shots. Pretty simple. I would defer to those who are doing more coaching than I am or watching more video than I am. It's just an observation I wanted to make, that I really noticed it last night, that Calgary seemed more successful against Ottawa because the Senators they just play differently. They'll challenge your point men. They want to use their speed. They want you to cough the puck up and go. And hey, it created some odd man rushes, and Markstrom bailed you out. Anyway, just a thought. And another thought I have, continuing with a theme that I had brought up previously. Why isn't Michael Backland the captain of this team? Why is Michael Backland not the captain of this hockey club? You probably read the comments post-game from Rasmus Andersson, who pointed directly at Michael Backland and other two helpers last night. Was great on the penalty kill. Perfect player, no, but nobody is. Drafted by this team back in 2007, developed by this team, traded away by fans and media of this team on many, many occasions when he was a young player, but has certainly grown into the role of a preeminent second line center, probably playing more, given more offensive responsibility than maybe you want with a Tkachuk and a Gaudreau in the lineup and those kind of offensive players. But I have to think, this is one man's opinion, but I have to think this is probably the biggest impact that Michael Backland has had on a Flames season. Now, granted, not going to the playoffs by the looks of it, but he's been really, really good. And there's no fault in the effort. The other intangibles that I like that, outside of the on-ice conversation, he and his wife Frida are huge in our community, are seen in our community, not unlike previous captains, Giordano and Iginla, making a difference, having an impact. Now, again, this all goes back to Daryl Sutter's reluctance to name a captain, pointing to it being a Canadian market and being it too much. I think that's a convenient reason, or I wouldn't use excuse. I think it's not an excuse when that's what Daryl thinks. That's how Daryl's mind works. He looks at it and says, it's just not high. I just don't want a captain. Though there are a lot of guys that have played for Daryl that say in many ways he's the captain of the team. He does a lot of the captain things inside that dressing room. I just think it's a miss. I really do think it's a miss. I think you're a year away from potential free agency for a guy that's been here his whole career. We can have the debate about potentially overpaying in that situation. That's been done before. I grant you that. I would think that anything beyond 2 or 3 years lengthwise for Backland will probably take him very close towards the end of his career. But I watched him again last night. I watched him all year. I think he has been one of your best. I think he has been a guy that has tried his best to carry his team. Never an all-star, won't be a Hall of Famer, but will probably be long remembered as a really capable player. I don't know. I just watched him and I thought, he should be your captain. And the way Rasmus Andersson was talking about him post-game last night, all of those sort of things. Understand, I get it. For I'm having a different conversation that I think the most fans are having right now. I think there's some anger and vitriol and all the things that go into missed expectations or lowered expectations or just a complete miss like this season has seemed like. This is a team that has underperformed most of the year. So I gather some of you probably don't want to have a conversation about guys who are having career years. I get it. Fully get it. By the way, we are live from the Oodle Noodle studio, as we always are. We're not just crazy about noodles. Oh, no. We put the same energy back into the community. Oodle Noodle, 2 locations in Calgary and area, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie. Pickup and delivery. Mike Board, general manager of the Calgary Roughnecks, scheduled to join us here in a couple of moments. The Roughnecks host their annual St. Patrick's Day game on Friday against the Saskatchewan Rush. Good season right now for the Roughnecks overall. We'll get into it with Bordy. They just come off going down and beating the NLL champion Colorado Mammoth in their own building. They are trailing. I'm not sure if he's going to find this as funny as I do. They are trailing the Calgary Roughnecks south, if you will, the Seals of San Diego. Lots of fingerprints on that. And they're really doing it. I don't want to say they're doing it on defense, but boy, they've got some interesting numbers when it comes to defending against some pretty good offenses. So we'll get to Mike Board in just a second here as well. Coming up, Ryan Pike joins us from FlamesNation. We'll talk about the Calgary Flames. We'll also talk a little bit about the Calgary Wranglers. And there was a meeting for a new building, a new event center last Friday. We'll get the latest on that. All right. As promised, I'm really excited about this. One of the first guys when we announced the show who reached out, congratulated, said, anytime you need me. And I said, well, we should do it leading into arguably your biggest regular season game. Mike Board is the general manager of the Calgary Roughnecks. He has held that position since 2011, although it seems like yesterday we were sitting in Shanks talking about Flames games. Bordy, how are you, buddy? Oh, okay, I can't hear you. Are you muted? Hold on a second. We'll get you there. Don't worry. The good news is Bordy can hear me. So we just know it's one little thing. We might have to get you to reconnect. Might have to get Gav to jump on there. I think we're going to get a microphone is what we're getting. So we'll get to Bordy here in a second. Yeah. Did I mention the theme song? I'm just buying a little time till we get Bordy hooked up here. We got this great look. We don't have a theme song, and I've been talking about this for a little while now. I'm going to rectify that. If you watch the show or stream the show or listen to the show on Wednesday, we are finally going to have a theme song for this here bad boy. And I'm done with generic free tracks, and I'm done with things that sound like I want a actual Just a Game theme song. I want a song that is created for this show. I happen to know a guy, so we are going to jump in on Wednesday, and I think you're going to find out that we've got a brand new theme song. So that, I think, has bought me enough time. Should we try Mike again? Okay, how about now, Mike? No, I can't hear you. Okay, it's okay. Gavin, do you want to take over here, and we'll see if we can't hook Mike up and get him connected. I'm hoping it's not on my end. I wonder if Gab, it might be on my end too. I'm wondering if we set up the Rotocaster the right way. So we'll get somebody to take a look at the Rotocaster just to see if maybe I'm not getting the volume from Bordy, because Bordy does have a microphone now. We got the right things on, guys? Should be. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll leave it for a second. And Gav, do you want to maybe give Bordy a call and just we're set up on this side. It's the joys of this new adventure, isn't it? Just trying to make sure everybody gets on. So we'll get Bordy on. Don't worry. We know Pike can get on. That's not a problem. Oh, and by the way, if you're a baseball fan, Canada and the U.S. played tonight at the World Baseball Classic. Canada crushing Britain 18-8 yesterday in 7 innings. Mercy ruled them. And the U.S. lost. They won their first game against Great Britain, but they lost yesterday against Mexico. So this is a later game tonight, I believe, 8 o'clock our time. Interested to see how this whole thing plays out. Big crowds. Like the crowds were into it. If you watch that U.S.-Mexico game, it was a full house in Arizona, and they were all over it, especially when it was a half and half crowd. So when Mexico went up big, they were certainly letting the American fans know about it. Anyway, Canada with a big. Oh, by the way, Tyler O'Neill. Yes, it's Great Britain, and I want to take that into consideration. Tyler O'Neill, 4 for 4, 4 runs, 4 RBIs, and 2 walks yesterday against Great Britain. So, again, I think they set a record. The 26 runs combined was a record for the World Baseball Classic. Great Britain dropping to 0-2. Anyway, so we'll watch with the further Canada goes in this. Of course, the interest will raise. But a later game tonight that you can catch on Sportsnet, I believe they are covering all of this and more. Take another opportunity just to remind you that we are in the Oodle Noodle studio. Local, love, delicious. Since opening their first store back in 2005, Oodle Noodle has been all flavor and just the right amount of weird. 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie, pickup and delivery. Gav, am I going to try him one more time? Should we try? Mike, I think we can hear you this time.
We hope so.
Yay! Yay!
Gavin's a wizard.
Well, no, this reminds you of our old Shanks days when I had to set up equipment. It was always life and death whether or not we were getting on the air, right?
Yes, I remember those days.
Hey?
Yeah.
In some ways, that feels like yesterday.
Yes. Doesn't feel like it's that long ago, but time flies in this business, I guess.
Next year will be 2 decades since the Red Mile started.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Holy
2004.
Cow.
Yeah. Yes.
2011 for you. You give up the dark side and you join sports. You become a general manager of the Roughnecks. Does that feel like just yesterday? I mean, you're heading into what? Year number 12, right?
Yeah, it's gone quick too, I'm going to suggest. So yeah, it feels didn't realize someone had mentioned it to me not that long ago, saying, yeah, how many years have you been at this? And I was sort of thinking 10, and then I thought about it again. Oh, it's more like we're in the 12th. So yeah. So time flies. Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, Rob. Right?
So yes, it does. So let's start there. How have you changed in 12 years as a general manager? What do you know now that you didn't know, or what skills do you have now that you didn't have when you took over this franchise?
Well, I think there's always the business side always grows. We do live in a bit of a cap world, so that becomes part of it. So I guess I'm getting better at my math and building some spreadsheets that way. I think the other part is managing athletes, because I think the athletes have changed in that time span, and it's a different generation, and I think there's more that the athlete expects from an organization. So I think that has evolved a little bit from what I would have called old school to perhaps new school.
So flesh that one out for me a little bit, Bordy, because we've all had those conversations about how the hockey players have changed, and how have lacrosse players changed. And when you watch hockey, you covered hockey, you talk to the GMs over there. I mean, are the athletes evolving in all sports the same way, or is it sport specific, the evolving?
I think it's all sports, to be perfectly honest. It's just it's kind of a different world, and there's, the CBAs become very important, and what's written in those CBAs obviously becomes very factual,
Yeah.
and there's expectations on that, where, you know, I think, particularly in our league, I don't think there was a lot of, it was kind of a loosey goosey, I guess, CBA when I first started, and
Hmm.
there's been a lot more buttoned down, and there's just a lot more that teams are required to, supply the players, pay the players, how you look after them, hotel wise, and a bunch of those things have changed. So I think I think, the expectations are slightly different. It may be the same in many workforces right now with a different generation coming in. So, that's been a pretty big adjustment to get used to. And if you miss something, they certainly will let you know that you
Yep.
missed something. So,
Yep.
which is fine. It's all within their rights to do so. So, that's a bit of a learning curve that you just have to be on top of.
Who do you think had to adapt the most, managers or coaches, when it comes to dealing with the new athlete?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I would think coaches, more so than managers, as ours is more on the contract side, or those types of things, where the coach is more day to day with
Right.
that player, and you know rather than screaming and yelling at him, then a guy well enough that it's okay. It's time to give him a pat on the back, and that'll get him back. Or there's just different ways to skin the cat when you're trying to get guys to perform better and things like that. So I think it's more on the coaches. But the coaches and, you know, managers consistently talk. So,
Hmm.
the ideas are shared amongst everybody, but I think delivery wise, it's probably the coaches.
Because I know you, and I have a little bit more insight into your history than most do, I always wanted to ask you this question. You were involved in, I believe, a labor stoppage when you were on the media side. You and I were around when the NHL did away with an entire season, which was somewhat unprecedented. And I believe you've now served on a couple of CBA negotiation committees for the NLL. Did you ever expect your path would take you into labor so much? Is that all? Is that
No,
an accident, or how did that work?
no. The this one, like with the NLL, there's a number of committees, and you're allowed to sit on two, and so we identified, um, the player relations committee, which is the negotiates the CBA,
Yep.
and the competition committee, as two very important committees that we should have representation on.
Sure.
So you have two board of governors, and so I sit on two, and like a Mike Moore, our VP, sits on two, and then we have Cam Olson, who's our CFO, and he's on the executive committee. So we've kind of tried to cover our bases and know what's going on around the league,
Yeah.
um, that way. So yeah, I didn't really put my hand up to get into the labor side of things, but it is a pretty important committee. So
Sure.
um, we've been pretty busy. There's been a couple of busy summers that we've had to get some CBAs done, and it sure cuts into your time because it happens, you know, almost constantly and for long days.
How do you process confrontation in these situations? When you were in the media, you were recording confrontation, right? Like did the coach and the player get along? You have to sit in those situations, Mike, and you've listened to players. These things get heated. What's the Mike Board theory or secret to dealing with hostile players and precarious situations?
You know what? I think in most cases, you have to be professional, and you have to have um, a calm approach to it, I suppose. You can calm but stern.
Hmm.
I don't think shouting matches do anything, and I think you also have to be able to listen. You hope that the other side is listening to your thoughts, and
Right.
I think you have to take into consideration their thoughts, and you know see if there's a happy medium, If there's not a happy medium, then it's a no, we're not going to do that, right? Sort of thing, and you move on to the next issue, particularly in collective bargaining. There's so many moving parts in it that you and many do tie together, but lots of times you want to look at cause and effect. If we do this, how does
Yep.
that affect this over here? So it's not. That's usually why it takes so long for things to sort of percolate. But I think it's having you know a professional approach to it, that you can try and put yourself in their shoes, and you hope that they put themselves in your shoes and see where both sides come out with a win-win if possible.
And I do want to point out, I don't want anybody to interpret this as you're in the middle of it. You have labor peace right now. You already have a negotiated deal. So things are good right now, right?
They are very good for the next. I think this one's got 2 more years after this season, so we've got a 3-year with I believe options to extend if both
Perfect.
both parties agree. So we're in pretty reasonable shape at this point.
So that's kind of your journey in the last 12 years, away from the game, but and the things that you've had to deal with. What about the league itself? Like, how has the NLL grown or changed in the 12 years that you've been at the helm of a team?
You know what? It's obviously grown in team numbers. When I first got here, it was 9 teams, and we're up to 15 at this point. So it's grown with expansion for sure. Teams have shifted around and moved to different cities. There's a team in Georgia now at Soda, for example. So
Yeah.
um, there's been those kind of growth. That particular growth is adding the number of teams, and I think growing now is it's still a ticket driven league, but
Hmm.
we are trying to get on television, get broadcast moving a little faster than it has in the past. So we've tried different methods, but and try and get some traction in that area to obviously attract bigger name sponsors and more money to keep things moving forward, because there's not a lot of teams that are making oodles of money at this. And
Right.
it's how long can you do that for before you have to reconsider. And we'd like to keep everybody together and actually keep expanding. So I think broadcast is a big focus, and I think it's evolved from where it was before. We were probably, when I first got in the league, I think our games were on YouTube, and that was it. So now we're on TSN and ESPN Plus,
Yep.
and on the web platforms of both. So I think that's an evolution that it's taken a lot longer than I think we would have liked, but I think that's probably the biggest evolution.
Um, the player pool. That's the it's funny. Again, I go back to your previous life as a beat reporter covering the NHL, and that was always a concern. Are there enough players? It seems to me that that's almost the opposite in the NLL, isn't it? You got from 9 to 15, 16 teams. How healthy is the player pool of box lacrosse players in North America?
I think it's still pretty healthy, but it's not as I can go back to our the first 2 or 3 drafts that I was a GM at, and you knew if you were in the top 10, you were going to get a player who was going to step into your lineup.
Right.
And now it's probably the last few years it's probably been top 5 or
Hmm.
6 picks are going to step in. So there's still lots of players out there. It's I just don't think the box player has developed the way we would have liked, or been picked up in the U.S. as much. And I
Hmm.
think that's a bit of a focus, because there's lots of kids who play lacrosse in
Yep.
the U.S., but it's field lacrosse. So how do you get them interested in box? And I think the league is working on a lot of grassroots programs with U.S. lacrosse to grow that.
All right. Enough about the other stuff. Let's talk about your team. You come into this season, and one of the storylines is you lose. Your arguably your best player in Curtis Dixon. However, as I look at the standings, as we sit here today, you're chasing well, the team that he went to. I mean, are we allowed to call them the Roughnecks South? Is that what we do in San
there's
Diego?
there's a
There's some
fair number of
fingerprints there, right?
that's fair. There's a good number of our players that have landed on the beaches in San Diego for sure.
But
So
you're 8-4 on the season. You know, a little bit more than halfway through it. Your evaluation. I mean, you've done this long enough. I'm kind of curious. You know, at what point do you begin to take your record seriously? And not the way that it sounds, but you know what I mean. When you really feel like you know what you have.
yeah, I think it's right in about now. Our trade deadline is next week. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there'll be some moves made by a number of teams. There's some separation in the East, so there's potential sellers, buyers, those kind of things are developing, and I'd say right now that we're in a situation where we want to be a buyer
Okay.
and take a run. So we've had it's a very different team from what we've had in the past. It's we always had plenty of offense,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of had to shift knowing how things could turn out with the departure of Curtis Dixon and Dane Dobie the year before. So we've built it basically a very strong defensive team with a good transition game
Yep.
and a really really good goalie, and that's kind of what's got us to where we're at right now, and that formula is working. But I think and our offense is is still producing, but it's the playoffs become a different beast, and you're probably going to have to find some more goals 5-on-5.
Let's talk about some of these guys. I mean, to me, Christian Del Bianco is now the face of your team. I guess Zach Currier probably falls into that, but there's almost a unicorn element to Del Bianco, isn't there? In what he brings. He's also got an incredible personality. He's fun. I don't know if he's a fun follow for a GM on social, but he's a fun follow on social. Tell us about where Christian Del Bianco fits in all of this for you.
He's the backbone, to be perfectly honest, and his numbers are MVP like for sure, goalie of the year like, in my opinion, hands down. But
Yep.
I think he deserves some. You look at his numbers; he's right up there in save percentage. He's, um, you know, goals against average, and that's I mean, both are team numbers, but he's the kind of guy that allows us to play the defense and transition game, because if we make mistakes, 9 times out of 10, he's there to bail you out. And then I look at how he moves the ball. I mean, he's got 18, 19
I know.
assists,
Yeah.
and it's I give him all kinds of credit. He's sort of was very disappointed in his season last year, and has come back with a vengeance. And he's spent his time in the gym. He works on those, passing the ball to
Mm-hmm.
a bucket at the end of the practice. He's throwing the balls into buckets at the other end. So he's worked at his craft, and I got to give him full credit for it. So um, he's you know he's a real good teammate, and he's okay for a manager. I mean, I don't necessarily watch him on Twitter or social that much, but he's a really good kid. He's matured a lot since we got him as an 18-year-old,
Yeah.
and he's a leader in there. He's a leader in that room, and um, always easy to talk to. And you know, he's a guy that he'll pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Bordy, how's your week going? Like, what are we doing this week?" And I said, "I don't
Right.
know. How's the team feel?" And we'll have a chat. Just that
Sure.
that
So he's a
type of
leader.
yeah. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Developed it totally into a leader, and he cares.
Yeah.
He wants to win, and when you got a goalie like that, I look around the league, and there's a lot of good teams out there that will not get the same type of goaltending as we've been getting, and they don't win as many games. So it's a critical position.
There are about 400 players in the league. He is currently 59th with 18 assists. I just love it. Well, I love it too because there's a donation that's made to Kidsport every time he does
Yeah,
one of those things. So
yeah.
that's fantastic. Tell me about evolving that particular skill, though. Because I know when we get into puck handling conversations with goalies that some will won't allow the experimentation, or Mike Smith, for instance. Oh my God. When you've got a young Christian Del Bianco, what's the mindset? Do you allow him to take those risks? Do you allow him to go long? Is there ever any time you want him not to take those shots down the field?
There are a couple, but mostly we've left it to him. He was very active when he first started playing for us.
Yep.
But when I say active, he was chasing down loose balls in the corners and
Mm-hmm.
leaving the crease. And that part we sort of said, you can slow down on that. We don't need you getting hurt. We don't, how everybody gets excited to see a goalie out of the crease and,
Yep.
now someone's going to come and want to lay him out. But,
Yeah.
so we kind of pulled that one back a little bit, but otherwise, he knows, when to throw it and when not to, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And he doesn't force it that much. There's the odd time where he might, but only it's probably when we're down or we need a goal to keep momentum going. But in most cases, he's kind of the quarterback back there, and him and the coaches will talk, and know, he sees the ball, he gets his rebounds quickly. He's got a lot of time to be able to figure out whether he should, throw the bomb or
Yeah.
hey, let's not this time. So we pretty much when he's that good at it, you give him enough, you just let him go, pretty
I
much.
I just worry that those who don't pay enough attention to the sport, or they just come to a one game or something and they see him do that, assume that everybody can do that.
Yeah,
It's your next starter, whenever that is, 5-10 years from now, may not have that skill. Like,
right.
that's right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I looked a couple of weeks ago and Christian had 17 assists. I think the next leading goalie had 2 or 3. So it's a
It's a lot.
big it's a big part of what
Yeah.
you can do with your team. And we've got, fast guys on the back end who,
Mm.
they don't need to cheat to get up the floor. They can outrun guys. So, we're not cheating it on D for guys to go, run the floor for him to throw to. And he hits guys with passes that you know, he amazes us,
Yeah.
right? And you're sort of like, how did he get that ball to that guy?
Yeah.
So he's very good at it, and we're we're happy to have him. And I hope he's our goalie in the next 5-6 years. So
Well, yeah, you take a look at, at some of the numbers, and just put it all in perspective. Um, you know, his 18 helpers puts him tied for third on your team.
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah,
So uh, again, not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. I just think that people need to understand there's something real special with that kid, and he's worth. And so is Zach Currier, right?
oh
Like,
yeah,
when we talk about Zach Currier, we're also talking about another superstar in the NLL.
yes, 100%. I mean, he does everything all over the floor. He's really good in transition. He's good on the defense. He's great with loose balls.
Yeah.
Causes turnovers. He's fast. He's hungry. He's like he's a guy. There are very few of him in the league as well that do so much all over the floor.
Having said that, you talked about it coming in, that, with the defections of, of Dobie, and of Superman, and all of these things the last couple of years, you kind of built from the goalie out. Tell me a little bit about, because this is not and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. This is not a Daryl Sutter version of a lacrosse team. You're not winning 5-4 or anything like that. You put 16 up against the defending champions. Where's the offense coming from, Bordy?
You know what? It's coming from the back end, and it's a mixture. We we do tend to score a fair bit in transition. Our guys are shooting the ball well when they get into transition. And then our captain Jesse King is up in the scoring race a little bit. So I think he's top 15 or so. So it's spread around, like it's really offense, kind of by committee. And when you start to get on, the winning ways and things like that, there's a lot of confidence in there. And we've had,
Mm-hmm.
a young guy like second-year player like Tanner Cook has stepped up and is putting the ball in the net, and another young guy who's I think he's only 21. I think he's 20. No, sorry, 22 now. Hayden Dixon is,
Yep.
you know, he's he's gaining confidence. So all those guys are starting to chip in. And if you look at, let's get, you know, we want to hold the other team to 10, so we're going to need 12 kind of concept. And
Right.
you spread that around and say maybe you get two on special teams, you get a couple of um, in transition, maybe two or three in transition, and the rest got to come 5-on-5, right? So, um, the guys have done a really good job, and um, I, if we can keep this up and the guys keep developing the way they are, we're very happy where we're headed.
I have done this long enough, and you and I are close enough friends that I'm pretty sure I know the answer that you will give me. But I'll ask the question anyway. You mentioned before trade deadline coming up. You would like to be in the position of buyer. Are you big game hunting, or are we going to take a page out of Treliving's book, and are you going to work around the edges? What would you like to do?
I think we're going to do both.
Okay.
We're going to search both. But I think when we look at getting out of the West and how tight that race is in the West, that
Yep.
it'd be nice to go big game hunting.
Ah, is
I
there
would
big
think.
game available yet? Do we know?
Not yet,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay.
But I'll be getting back to the phones after this and see what's going on. There's a lot of um, it's interesting. You can sort of look and think, yeah, that guy's probably going to be a seller, but teams have players sort of in the system that went back because of the COVID
Right.
situation, have really good players coming out next year
Mhm.
to join them. So they don't really want to break up their teams because this is a league that you can go from, worst to first in a hurry.
Right.
So it's pretty hard to go big game hunting. The biggest one I think this year, Panther City acquired Callum Crawford, who's a top
Yep.
scorer
Yep.
early, and that was, that's part of our league that he ended up with a job down that way, and just made life easier for him. So that kind of is a geographical deal, I suppose. But
Mhm.
that was a big game hunting one, and I don't know if there's any of those left.
Okay. Well, again, a week to go. We will find out. I hope at some point TSN is going to give you guys a trade deadline show. You deserve a trade deadline show,
That would
right?
be nice.
It'd be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
What are your brethren like? Like when you're trying to put deals together, what are the other general managers like in this league? Are they fraidy cats? Are they,
No,
gunslingers or card players? Or how would you describe your
they're.
group?
I would say they're card players. Most of
Okay.
them. I mean, we started discussions weeks ago to sort of see where people are at and what they're thinking about their players, and
Right.
you know, are you going to re-sign this UFA, or is he going to be a rental player for somebody, or those kind of conversations take place. And I think it's most are cautious when they enter
Mhm.
into a trade. Don't want to give up too much, don't want to get too little in return.
Right.
And the markets in our league can shift all over the place. So I think that's the trickiest part. It's the deals don't. You have to have your conversations done before that trade deadline day, and then as the clock ticks, it develops, and there might be a couple of tweaks, but it's usually pretty clear sort of the Sunday before the trade deadline of how things are gonna turn out.
Is there anybody you won't trade with? Would you do a trade with the team that's coming in here on Friday? Would you do a trade in the middle of the season with Saskatchewan?
Well, we did one earlier this year with them. We haven't had that many with them, maybe two,
Okay.
three. Um, but yeah, we would. And it's funny in the situation that you're in. Like, would you do that prior to this weekend when you're playing them? Nope, you're going to hold on to that one till Sunday, right? And
Sure. That makes
and
sense.
uh, and it depends where you are in the standings in that situation, right?
Mhm.
We picked up the trade we made earlier this year was for Josh Courier, who is Zach's brother,
Right.
who he basically was the next guy up there, and but wasn't playing. So we made an inquiry because we'd had an injury, and felt the right side could use some help. So, we made a deal with Saskatchewan, which is always tough
Mhm.
because when you make one with someone you think is, like
Yep.
that's another good team that you're going to have to, you want to finish ahead of them. So yeah, it's interesting when you're doing trades in the West for sure.
Let's leave. I want to come back and promo the game this weekend because it's a big one and it's a fun one and all of those sort of things. But speaking of fun, you know how much I love fun. Um, I saw an outdoor game.
Yes.
I saw an outdoor game.
Yeah.
What did
Yeah.
you think? What did you make of
I
this? Was in
thought
San
I
Diego,
thought they
right?
did. I thought they did. I thought they did a nice job. Like I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty interesting. I was wondering how it would what the configuration in the stadium would look like and
Hmm.
things like that. So I thought they did a pretty good job to get people as close as possible to the action. And it's not like you're following a black puck. It's a pretty fast moving ball out there. So
Right.
I thought they did a really nice job on it. And they had a pretty good crowd for San Diego, and
Yep.
they got a great day for it. And I think that might be one of several to come. Who knows? They might have one every year.
Oh, so was that a league event or was that a team event
It
for
was a
the
bit of both.
bit of both? Okay.
San Diego had approached the league about
Right.
doing that, and then the league
Right.
got involved as a bit of a partner to help it out. And I I I look at it, and it looked like it was fun, and the players looked like they were having fun, and yeah, I think it was a neat twist to our game, particularly in the U.S. where
Hmm.
people are used to the field game and
Right.
playing outdoors. So we'll bring the box game to you guys, and you can still sit in stands and enjoy the sunshine.
I have wondered about it just because of this the scheduling of your season, right? You're essentially a late November, early December to a May June league. It kind of seems a little prohibitive that I could start campaigning for one at McMahon Stadium. I'm not sure I
Ye-
should do that.
Yeah, no, we I don't know when we'd be able to do that. We just have our weather is just a little too funky in Calgary
Yeah, yeah,
to predict, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there are other places. I mean, we have a team in Texas now.
Hmm.
We've always got San Diego. Denver would be another great spot to have an outdoor game, but their weather is a bit
Similar
like
to here.
ours.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's tricky. I mean, um, maybe you do a showcase tour in the summer or something and have some game, have a game
Hmm.
out at McMahon Stadium or something. But yeah, pretty tricky for us to do one. But um, I think for the league it was a nice little twist this year.
It's Friday night. It's when is like okay, this is the sad part, but I think you know me well enough to know why I don't know. When's St. Patrick's Day? Is it Friday?
It is Friday.
So you
Yeah.
are playing your St. Patrick's Day game on St. Patrick's Day, which you did last year, which was on a Thursday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And are there tickets available for this? Because I kind of, this is a big game, Bordy. People like this game, Bordy.
They do. They do. They have a lot of fun at this one. I'll tell you. Um, yeah, it's been one of our best over, the number of years that we've been holding it. And I think there are still tickets available, but they are going pretty quick. Like
Yeah.
we've had a lot of pre-sale, and if you're looking to get tickets, you might want to start out today. And if that's what you're going to do, then book in because I think we're going to have a pretty full house.
And you will wear a St. Patrick's Day jersey?
We do. They just arrived on Friday, and they are out getting the numbers stitched on, and it's a different design from what we've had in the past, but
Oh,
it looks pretty nice.
okay.
Still in the St. Patty's mode, obviously,
Oh,
but
well, obviously. Yeah, that goes
yeah,
without saying.
but
But
yeah.
a little
So
more
we'll probably
green.
probably probably unveil them later this week.
Okay. A little more
Yeah,
green to them,
a
perhaps?
little more
A
green,
little more
little more
green?
green. Not too
All right.
much because we are playing a team that
Well, that is
is
green.
green.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. But they're lime green, aren't they? Or neon
yeah, and
green or
they'll
some
be
god awful green?
they'll be wearing their whites anyway, so
Okay.
we'll be okay.
All
Yeah.
right. You mentioned the trade, but let's talk about the rivalry. Was Edmonton, is Saskatchewan, just for whatever reason. And then the nice thing about them is they travel okay. Like they bring some people to the building. So there's
Yes.
always a little hate on in this game.
Yeah, it's they've been a powerhouse for a long time. They've been a real good team for a long time. I mean, I don't think they they missed the playoffs last year, which I
Mm-hmm.
think was a surprise to most. And this year they've had some injuries along the way here, but they're always an extremely tough opponent, whether we're in Saskatchewan
Yep.
or back here. I mean, I think last year we played them twice in Saskatchewan, if I'm correct,
Mm-hmm.
and we won both of them last year in
Yep.
Saskatchewan, which we had not done since they moved to Saskatchewan. That building is loud, and the fans are great. They've got a good thing going there, and I think that just helps the rivalry.
Your crowds have been up too, though, right? I know it was a little sluggish at the start, but you had the two in the same weekend, and I from what I gather, you've been getting the crowds that you were more used to pre-COVID. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, that's very fair,
Yeah.
actually, and it's taken some time, and I think it's you know we're all still dealing with that hope, hangover from COVID,
Hangover.
I guess.
Yeah,
So
sure.
so it's taken a little bit of time, but the crowds have been great. Actually, the players were um, noted on that back-to-back weekend that I think we had 12 and 10 or something along those 12,000 and then 10,000 or something along those lines, which was those are really good numbers for a
Mm-hmm.
back-to-back lacrosse game in Calgary. So the players loved it. It was great. I think it was probably um, from a business standpoint, you never know how
Yep.
if you're going to get both nights with great crowds, but we did. So we may try that again because the players don't mind playing two in a weekend without travel in between, right? So
You are
yeah.
now, not to remind you something, but you are now 4-0 in that situation,
Yes, I
right?
know.
You're
Yeah,
now 4-0 in that situation.
yeah,
And I believe somebody said, had you lost a game last year, we would have never seen double or two in a row at home again. But now it's a must add to the schedule because
yeah,
you're winning, right?
yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's
what works.
interesting. Like and I go through some of the stats sometimes and look at back to backs and who wins on the back to back
Mm,
and on the second game of the back to back. And very often, if the team has played on Friday and then play again on Saturday, they win on Saturday.
right.
And I don't know why, but it just seems to be a bit of a trend in a lot of cases. The team that has played one game already on the weekend wins the next one.
I didn't even pay attention to this. Will you play Christian in both situations? Have you any consideration to not playing your goalie in back-to-back situations?
No, we would unless he says something to us that he's fatigued
Right.
or whatever. But no, we would. He actually, we'd probably have to drag him out with
I
he'd
was
be
about
hanging
to
onto
say
the net.
I was
He'd
about
be
to say 18
yeah,
games as opposed to 82 games. You
yeah,
could probably get away with it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He wants to play every minute of every game for sure.
All right. Again, this Friday, St. Patrick's Day, special jerseys. You know, we love our jerseys around here. A little more green, which I like. One day we'll get you back on and we'll have that conversation about your Star Wars jerseys again. Because
Yes.
I won't be doing that to you again. I won't be, hey, like a Tom Con, and you looking at me like I have three eyes. Won't have that conversation again. What I would like to do is before I let you go, and you know this because I've said this to you. To me, you've been such a huge friend and a great mentor for me. I just like to pick your brain a little bit on what you used to do. You were you not the first full-time employee of CalgaryFlames.com?
Yeah, for a while the only, I think.
Right. Well, I
So
know that goes without saying. Not with all, yeah. And I credit you because you were joining me as a radio analyst when we were doing Flames games at Shanks North and Shanks South, and you were the one that introduced me to Newsreader, and I still use a Newsreader thanks to you. But you also pointed out something to me that was really interesting, and I really want to take a moment just to let you take a victory lap on this one thing and I said it to you way back. I want to say 2007. Flames did a deal with Sportsnet, and you said to me, I asked you what you thought of the deal, and you said it was good, but wish you got the digital rights, wish you got the video rights. And I had no idea what you were talking about, but you understood early the importance of video, and here we are now in 2023, and there are some who suggest 40 that the highlight, the access to highlights might be worth more than the actual games by 2030. You look back at that part of your life and what you've seen. You were kind of an early adopter to all this. Are you surprised where we are digitally now in the world of sports?
Gee, I think, to be honest, I think it's come leaps and bounds from what I would have predicted back then, I
Okay.
suppose.
Yeah.
Um, just in the the way it can be delivered now, and you mentioned the short highlight clips, and
Yep.
there's so many companies out there that the league, our league, for example, can employ a company, and you know we get their software, and the goal clips are done like within 20 seconds of the goal happening, and you can grab it and put it on Twitter or
Yep.
Instagram or whatever. That part I think has developed quicker than what I thought, but the way people are consuming their information and their sports these days, that makes sense, right? It's quick, it's easy, it's in my hand, and I can see everything. So yeah, I think it's advanced, and it's probably going to evolve even further. But as things unfold, but I think it's a really it's pretty neat. Like you're uh, as a fan, you can keep
Hmm.
caught up without having to be in a building, which we're
Hmm.
ticket driven. So does that help us or not? I don't know,
Sure.
but hey, it's about creating fans and excitement around your team, and I think that helps.
Do you ever think about how the world might have changed if and it wasn't that they weren't listening to you, that's not, but again, you in 2007 were saying, geez, I wish we kept the rights, the team kept the rights to the video. How would that have changed and shaped sports, man? Like that's if the teams had kept the rights rather than giving them up.
Yeah, I think that that would be interesting, right? I mean, now it's yours as another property to generate some revenue,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
But I think that the TV people on the other side, and the broadcasters and the companies there were probably thinking along the same lines and saying, wow, this is
Yeah.
someday going to be pretty valuable. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there was in any negotiation, I don't know if there was a deal to be struck to keep everybody happy, right? But
Right.
um and here we are, sort of in that time, and there may be some deals that come up now that are, hey, you want the digital rights too, and it's on top of, and off you go, right?
And the last one I'll leave you with, the single only employee of CalgaryFlames.com, the first one. What do you think of the fact that now CalgaryFlames.com is the largest sports media entity in Calgary?
That is, isn't that an interesting
It
shift?
isn't it?
um, I go back to the early days, and Tori Peterson is
Yep.
one of the people that first joined. I think she might have been employee number two, actually, but she was at school at the time and came in um, on a work
Practicum?
type thing. Yeah, work practicum, and did a great job. And next thing you know, she was full time kind of thing, right? While she was going to school. So and I can remember us scrambling to try and keep up with all of the media in town to be able to tell the stories and get the news out. And it was so different, and just the way the newspaper and broadcast industry headed.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I think that was a trend at the time that the NHL had seen, at least, that what, teams, beef up your digital side of things, because you are going to be delivering the team message more so than the media, that the,
Mhm.
the mainstream media that we know today. So a little bit of foresight on the league's part there to get that ball rolling. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I walk by the digital spot every day and go, wow, look at all those people.
Well,
So, and it's great.
yeah,
So
it's to me, but it's how much you try or how much you innovated, how much you tried, and how long the drag was until it happened. Because the other one would be, I remember you you came to Shanks one day and you got me to sign up for some sort of fantasy, some sort of you started a little fantasy program for CalgaryFlames.com.
Yeah.
And I would sign up, and I can't remember what I was predicting and those sort of things, but now you look and the obviously legalized betting, but we're talking about 15, 16 years ago, you were testing this stuff out, and now it's a reality. That's the crazy part to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting business, and
Yeah.
that whole digital side, um, I think is still got lots of room to
Room.
grow.
Sure.
And it's how do you keep eyeballs on your information without scaring them away with too many commercials or whatever it is that it might be, because you got to, people want to get their information quickly and have a discussion about it, so it's tricky, but I think I think it's going to evolve more, and maybe we are 5, 6, 10 years from now subscribing to a NHL highlights package for the
Yep.
night.
Yep.
Like, who knows, right? But hockey fans probably eat that up, right? So I think it'll be interesting.
I think it'll be interesting too, but I just wanted to make mention of that and thank you, because you certainly played a large role in how I view the sports world, and it's been a lot of fun. Mostly, I just want to tip my hat and congratulate you. You might be here in Calgary. Well, you and probably Huff and Dave have had the most consistent franchises here in the last couple of decades. Somehow you lose your big players, you find a way to get new ones, you find a way to get young ones. And I think this is going to be a heck of a season for you guys, but I'm really excited about Friday. It's always great when the Rush come to town. It's always great when it's St. Patrick's Day, and it's always great when you get to wear another jersey. So we'll leave it there. Bordy, thank you for doing this. Appreciate your patience off the top, but we will get you back on, I'm sure, as the season goes on. But thanks for spending some time with us today.
Anytime, Rob. You take care.
All right, buddy. Mike Board, everybody. Well, you know that because it's a podcast and you know who the guests are, but some of the old radio habits die hard. But again, I can't thank that guy enough, because now when I look back at it, dude was just cutting edge. Like, he was talking in 2007 about how the team should have retained video rights and what if they did. And it just seemed like, well, no, you're getting money for TV and radio. Why the hell do you care about the video rights? There's a reason. And he saw it and he talked about it. And now he's as successful a general manager as you're going to find anywhere in the world of lacrosse. This last segment brought to you by you. Yes, your business, organization, or event. We will work with you to make sure we get your message out to the ever-growing audience here at the Nation Network. For more information, go to www.robkerr.ca/sponsorship. And the Wolverine will get a hold of you. Absolutely, he will. Let's not waste any time. Let's move on to our regular Monday contributor. You know him, you love him, from FlamesNation.ca, and appearances on programs like this. He is the managing editor over there. He writes like a demon. He's got opinions, and he's everywhere. Friday, he was at City Council, and he deserves danger pay, quite honestly, for that. We bring on our good friend Ryan Pike to talk about the local hockey heroes. Mr. Pike, how are you?
Rob, I'm good. I'm glad you had Mike Board on. One of something that I don't think Mike gets enough credit for is, I believe it was him and Darcy McGrath started the Calgary Puck message board way back in the day. And
Bordy had a role in that?
My understanding is that Bordy had a role in that.
I knew Darcy did. I absolutely know that Darcy. I didn't realize Bordy had his fingerprints on that.
I forget how much Mike was involved, but I know him and Darcy were sort of the godfathers of that. And obviously, Mike went on to do a bunch of other things, but yeah, it's as someone who really enjoys, just building communities, it's really cool to sort of see folks like Darcy and Mike and, a few other people in the community, really doing a lot to sort of build places for people to interact and engage about their favorite sports teams.
Well, and you were there because I saw you. So you heard the last bit, but my God, we're at Shanks North in 2006, and Bordy's getting me to sign up for some fantasy hockey thing that he's set up. And it's all the precursor to what would come down the line, right? And, when we were talking about the video, why would the team maintain the video rights? Well, the team would maintain the video rights so that they could show highlights to people during the game. Well, what would they show that? Like, people weren't taking laptops or desktops to the games. And Mike was going, well, there'll be platforms on their phones. What are you talking about? He was ahead of the game, man. And here we are living in that world. And it does make me wonder, what's next? Like, what are we what are we overlooking? How are you and I going to be doing this in 20 years? God forbid. But how?
Who knows?
What platform? Who knows, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's how things are evolving are fascinating. It's just the fact that, like I used to joke that FlamesNation used to be Kent Wilson and I in our spare bedrooms putting out a bunch of stuff that we hope people would read, and now it's sort of grown into all kinds of stuff. So it's exciting, but it's also kind of exhilarating to sort of see how far it's grown from where it started.
And there's another Godfather figure, Kent Wilson, right? There's another guy, much maligned blogger in his parents' bedroom that's trying to take jobs away from real me. Like, I lived that whole reality too, right? And now how the turtles, how the tables have turned, and the turtles, quite honestly. But here we are. I'm going to do something a little different this week. We'll get to the local hockey heroes in a second. Take me back to Friday, City Council. Just what's the latest? What did you see? What did you hear in terms of the event center?
Well, I mean, publicly, there's not a lot. We've been hearing rumblings that a lot of people in council were basically told, hey, if you can't be there in person, it's your best interest to dial in, because there's going to be a lot of stuff you'll need to know about. Mm-hmm. And so there's councilors who are out of town who dialed in. I think it was, it went from, usually there's a handful of councilors there to basically twice as many councilors in person. And I didn't get a tally of how many ended up tuning in otherwise, but this thing is starting to move fast. The Art Aaron and Dan Barrett from CAA Icon were in attendance to give people updates on basically how things are going. They, basically went to a boardroom, spent 2.5 hours catching people up, and evidently, they had 2.5 hours of stuff to catch people up on. So, I mean, the fact that they're meeting so regularly has to be seen as a good sign, because you don't need to meet regularly if there's nothing to update people on. You can send an email saying nothing new, and then you can save everybody time. So the fact that they're meeting is a good sign. The fact that they're meeting regularly is a good sign. And the fact that they had, for lack of a better term, 2.5 hours of stuff that they wanted everybody to get their heads around is a good sign. So, I mean, to steal a phrase from Bradshaw Living, it's everything's probably done except for dollars and term. But, I think I'm getting the feeling from talking to people that things are inching along ever so well. Much like everyone else, when I tweeted the update from the committee chair, Sonia Sharp, saying that she was thrilled, I got a bunch of replies saying, "Tell me when there's shovels in the ground." And I think a lot of people are in that boat. They're going to be excited when there's actually a hole they have to fill with a building or something.
Well, and in fairness to Tree's point about all it is dollars and term, that's the sticking point, right?
Yeah.
And I do worry that maybe we're playing nice around the edges and avoiding the hard part. Now, I don't believe that CAA is going to do that. I don't believe the Flames would do that. But, at some point the rubber needs to hit the road. We need to get some details need to be shared because of the public interest and the public commitment. Right?
What ended up happening last time, I was talking to some colleagues. We were basically, twiddling our thumbs for 2.5 hours waiting for them to come out of the meeting. Mm-hmm. And, essentially what happened last time was when the event center, I believe it was March of 2019, when they formally resumed talks between the city and CSEC. And then by mid to late July, they had a deal. And so they started talking mid to late October of 2022, and we're about 5 months since then. So, obviously there's more complexities than there were before. Like, the dollars have gone up, the complexities of the deal have gone up, the potential need to either hack stuff out or add people in has probably gone up. So it's going to be more complex. So I don't anticipate it'll be done immediately, but, we're about more or less on the same track in terms of committee age, in terms of number of months of formal negotiations. And last time, I mean, in 2019, we didn't have a playbook. They didn't have a bunch of agreements from the last time. They had basically lost a lot of mistrust and bad feelings. And honestly, from both sides, I can see why they'd have sticking points and they'd be a little bit will have their guards up a bit. But this time, I think, the fact that there's, CAA Icon has their fingers in pretty much every major deal that's been done. They know how to get deals done, and they know who has money and how these things tend to look.
Right.
So I don't know. It's an interesting time. I have a feeling that like last time this happened, we basically got word before a council meeting. Oh yeah, it was on a Friday. We got told, oh yeah, they might have a deal. They're going to bring it to council on Monday, and then Monday we went to council, and oh yeah, they had a deal.
Yeah.
So this thing could turn much like it last time very quickly from, oh, they can't tell us much in these meetings because everyone has NDAs they're being beholden to, oh wait, here's a whole deal, and wrap your heads around it very quickly.
Okay. I'm going to turn my attention to your screen because I want to make sure that if I make your eyes roll into the back of your head with my next question, that I apologize, because it is one of those questions that maybe not necessarily reality as much as, how stuff churns out there sometime. Is there any role to the fact of the election cycle here, that the last time that a deal was done, it was kind of button up against an election, and you can get some elected officials get a little tense around there. The fact that we've just had the election, and is the timing of this at all connected to the election cycle?
I wouldn't think so. I think we're far enough away from the next one that I think some folks on council are sort of, eyeing potential future moves, and some people are just trying to get the things that they got elected to do done. So I think, when politicians are involved, there's always a little bit of playing to the future, a little bit playing to their base, and trying to make sure everything gets done. But I don't think so. And same thing with the provincial election. Like there is no explicit funding available for this thing in the provincial election or in the provincial budget. So I don't think there'll be much in the provincial government, dating back multiple government changeovers and multiple premiers, have always been kind of down on giving a lot of money for these kind of things. They see it as more of a municipal issue. But we'll see.
The current premier would like you to know that she's right on top of it, right? Like she's tried to make it a bit of an issue for her.
The current line from the premier's office, and actually the current line from the committee too, is they've talked a little bit, but it's essentially the premier's office sees it as a municipal project, and if they need help or if they want to reach out and say, hey, can you do something for us, they know who to call. They know to talk to Rick McIver. But at the same time, I mean, unless there's money on the table that's available, I don't know. There's a few easements and stuff that the community revitalization levy that governs the Rivers District. You can't under the current definition of it, you can't use those funds for direct construction costs of something like an event center. The province has the ability to change the wording to allow it. So it wouldn't really be direct funding, but that's probably the only thing they could do. And that's still money that's sort of under the auspices of the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. So to be blunt, they probably already have plans for all of it already. If you go to Stampede Park and you drive around, the LRT renovation is being funded by the CRL. A lot of the road work in and out, basically pretty much everything around the BMO Center that's not the BMO Center itself is being funded by the CRL money. They have plans when/if the arena starts getting built. They're going to be transforming. I believe they're changing they're changing Olympic Way to Stampede Trail, and they're basically going to be completely redoing that street into a festival street. And that'll be coming out of CRL money. So even if the province waved their magic wand and said you can do whatever you want with the CRL, I think a lot of that money has already been earmarked for projects.
Okay. One last one on this, and this one I don't think should roll your eyes back your head, but I think it's a procedural question more than anything. Last week, there was the announcement of a 2030 Commonwealth bid exploration group. This building that we're talking about was built with the 88 Olympics in mind. Arguably one of the most important venues in Edmonton was built with the Commonwealth Games in mind in 78, but there is no role that a 2030 Commonwealth Games will play in speeding up or impacting the construction of the event center.
Probably not, no. And even with the way the bid cycle goes for the Commonwealth Games, I mean, there's a lot less infrastructure money usually involved with the Commonwealth Games, a lot less government money from various levels of government involved, and it's a summer event. So I mean, you can probably find a way to use an event center for a summer event, but if you're, I think if I'm someone who is really looking forward, as I am, to them getting rubber on the road for that field house, that might be the thing I go, oh boy, they're doing the Commonwealth Games bid. That sounds really cool, because I think that could get an injection of funds in from outside to really move that project forward.
See, This is the exact reason that Elliot Friedman defers to you on all matters involving the arena and the city of council of Calgary. So that's right there why you're so important. Damn it. Let's talk about the local hockey heroes.
They won on Sunday night.
They won on Sunday. Boy, I don't like their math. 5 points back in Colorado, 3 games in hand there. Tied with
Math's not going to get better. Math is not going to
get better. All you can do is win hockey games. Let me, rather than us review, because you write about them, they're there at FlamesNation, and I'm sure by now you're probably done talking about Anaheim. But I want to run an observation by you, because I said it earlier on the program, but I accept that it's a television observation, not an in the building observation. You are in the building. If I was DJ Smith or the Ottawa Senators last night, why would I have not just collapsed on Mandalese? Because Anaheim collapsed on Gibson, Minnesota collapsed on Gustafson. I just don't think this Flames team, when you start putting 5 guys in that box area in front of the net below the hash marks, it's death for them.
I think they tried to a certain extent, but I mean, this was, in hockey, we talk about scheduled wins. Basically, if you're playing a team that played the night before and traveled, it's a scheduled win. If you're rested and the other team isn't, it's
for who? Who is a scheduled win?
It should be a scheduled win for the rested team. The Flames have sort of bucked that trend at times this year.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing is, for back-to-backs, the Flames have a better record the second game of back-to-backs. It's the spookiest thing. Yeah. But they were facing a team that lost that left. I think they played until 11 o'clock Calgary time. I think it was 10 o'clock, 10:30 local. Then their flight got delayed. They didn't leave Vancouver until about 1:30. They didn't land in Calgary until about 1:40. Then by the time they got to the hotel, they lost the time change. So it was. This was as much help from the schedule and from the time zone gods as the Flames were going to get. And give them credit. I mean, they were playing a team that looked gassed at times and tried to collapse down, but they lost. They lost one of their players to Matthew Joseph left halfway through the game after getting crunched by Tyler Toffoli. They had a few players just get absolutely hobbled by blocking shots. So I think they tried to do the old shell, and they couldn't execute it because of the fatigue. They couldn't execute it because the Flames outbattled them. I think give the Flames credit. Like, they were the faster team. They got to the upper grabs areas much faster than Ottawa did. And Ottawa was tired, but the Flames had the opportunity to beat up on a tired team, and they did it. So I think you got to give them a bit of credit for that. But
I give them credit. I just watching Anaheim on Friday night, it just feels like without Gaudreau and Tkachuk, and I know at some point we have to say goodbye and not talk about them anymore. But when they get to those teams that collapse and they have all that body in front of the net, they're just not skilled enough to pick corners. They're not skilled enough to find lanes. They still try.
I think Cam Charron noted this when he was on Twitter this week. He was talking about the Flame style of game and their pure shot volume game. And he noted, he's like, the teams that have success translating shot volume into a lot of really good scoring chances are the ones that can sort of get those secondary chances and get inside the hash marks. And the Flames were really good at that last year, for example, because bless his heart, Sean Monahan built his career off of getting those kind of greasy goals. He also got his, for lack of a better term, he got his ass kicked. His body is in shambles now. I hope he has a good post hockey career, and that he is able to do a lot with the money he earned, because he earned that money the hard way. But Tkachuk was kind of like that. They've had a lot of players. I think Kadri is probably the guy that embodies that the most. But it's a style of game that really demands the players collapse down to get those second chances. And if the other team battles harder than you, or you don't get the bounces, there's not much you can do. Right. And unfortunately this year, but by hook or crook, by bad luck or just bad execution, they just haven't been able to translate that, massive shot volume into a lot of secondary chances right in the slot area, where that's where most of the goals are scored in the league.
Do they have a primary shooter? I know Toffoli takes the shots, but and again, this is old man talking to guy who's there. Iginla, Camilleri, even Kachuk to a certain extent? Do they have a grade A shooter? Is that part of this? Are they taking too much?
I think Toffoli's the closest one.
Okay.
Toffoli's the closest one. Kadri, I'm willing to give Kadri a bit of a pass for this season because he had such a long year last year, and to be blunt, he got beaten to hell winning a Stanley Cup. So I mean, if you get a ring, you get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but there's a lot of guys that had much longer summers than him that just haven't been able to execute the same way. I mean, Kachuk, was that guy for the Flames before. Gaudreau had that skill level where he didn't really need to get into those areas because he was so good with the puck and, his ability to do that kind of thing. I mean, Lindholm was also a guy that did that consistently, but again, they haven't been able to, his wingers haven't been able to as consistently at 5-on-5 translate they're into the zone on the wings and, here's a chance. And a lot of them get swallowed up by the goalies now. And, it's minor execution things that just snowball on them, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, here we are, whatever, I guess it was game 67 last night. So, and we've already talked about how far it's slipping away, some of this stuff. And the next question I think is a perfect example of that. Maybe it's not. How much of this is just us not having to talk about a ship that's sinking and all of the bad things that may happen in the off season and all the difficult choices, but, just trying to still talk about hockey issues. And I would point to how big a deal is it that Jonathan Huberdeau goes back to the left side?
I think it's a pretty big deal. I mean, he's set the National Hockey League assist record for a left wing last year. And granted, different system. Granted, Florida's power play was a lot better than Calgary's is this year. There's a lot of things that went well for him in Florida that haven't gone as well. But I mean, the big bugaboo, I think, for the Flames this year has been trying to get Huberdeau going. I mean, early in the year, he was dealing with an illness and a minor injury early on. He was playing through it. Then he missed a couple of games. Then they put him with Backland. And, basically once he got put with, on the Lucic line, like Lucic doesn't play his off wing. He never has. So since about December 20th or 22nd, he was on his off wing and he produced, he got some, his boxcar numbers were a little bit better there than they were on his left side, but his underlying numbers, like he was much worse defensively. He just didn't really have the comfort zone playing the two-way hockey. He was a better offensive player, but at the cost of his defensive side. And all due respect to Nazem Kadri, all due respect to Milan Lucic, even give your respect to guys like Nick Ritchie and Jacob Pelche. They're not two-way players who can cover up deficiencies the way, say, Blake Coleman can or the way Michael Backland can.
Right.
And so they had the ability to, when he was on the left side, put him with guys, Lindholm is one, Backland's another, who are really good at sort of covering up the holes in their teammates' games. And basically, they're so, especially, I think Lindholm and Backland specifically very underappreciated outside this market, probably always has been, but they're so good at sort of just filling in the gaps with their line mates. And, if you're not playing on the line with those two guys, it's tough. And you really have to have the attention to detail where it needs to be. And unfortunately, if you're still learning a system, if you're playing the off wing, if you're still adjusting to a lot of little intricacies that you're not used to, it can be a tough night. And, I think, they're working on it, but the clock is ticking. I think that was probably one of the better games I've seen Kadri and Huberdeau play offensively in a while. And, granted, bear in mind the opposition, but they had the ability to, have that as a slump buster to get their games going. And, now they're heading, looking ahead to the road trip. I mean, they got Arizona on Tuesday. That's a tough building to play in with how, Arizona is not nearly as bad as people think they are. They're very scrappy. Clayton Keller is exceptionally good. And then you go to Vegas where they've gotten 1 point in however many years that Vegas has been in the league. It's their new house of horrors. It's taken over for Anaheim. And they just can't, they've never won a game in Vegas. I think they've won or they've led, I think, for a grand total of maybe 30 minutes total.
Yeah.
So
and most of that came in the last game.
Yeah. I think before that they had the lead for like 2 minutes in a previous game of the previous season.
Yeah, and they blew a 2-goal lead. Michael Backland, I have a question. I have more of a comment. I'll lead with the question. Is this his most impactful season as a Flame?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's, it's a team that, for lack of a better term, doesn't really have a clear identity. Before they were sort of they had the guys that came in, Monahan was a guy that helped build the team identity. He came in 2013. They signed Gaudreau, late in his first season. Then they brought in, somebody named Matthew Tkachuk, and even Sam Bennett when he came in. Like, there was a bunch of guys that sort of contributed to their team identity that all sort of disappeared into the wind over the course of an offseason. And it's, I think at times the team has sort of been trying to figure out what they are outside of their playing style, like what they want to be. And, Rasmus Anderson is pretty vehement about it last night when I spoke with him. He said, he's our leader. He's been their most consistent player. He's been arguably their best player night in, night out. And, combine that with the fact that, he's been with the organization the longest and he wears a letter. He's basically their leader. He's been their de facto captain, first over the boards in every game situation, just about. And he's been what they needed him to be. I mean, he's never going to be a 40-goal scorer, I don't think. All due respect to him, that's not his game. Nope. But, he's so good at so many other things that, if he's on his game and he can shut down the other team's top guys, you have a chance to win. And he's been able to do it more often than not this season. And, barring some weird bounces, I mean, if the goaltending is a little bit better this season, I think we're talking about, I think you look at Backland's numbers and go, ooh, maybe he's been bandied about at the Athletic Donald Session when he does his awards watch columns. He's been, constantly touted as a Selke Trophy candidate. I mean, he's not going to win. He's, probably be second in voting behind Patrice Bergeron, if not a little bit lower. But I mean, being in the same conversation with Patrice Bergeron for that award is such good company to be keeping.
And now the comment, and I've made this comparison before. This is completely me, Don Quixote, tilting at a windmill. Why isn't he the captain? Like, it's absurd. I get
34 next week, and his contract has a year left. I think if not for his contract status, I think he probably would have had the letter.
See, I don't think he would have. I think it's Daryl. I don't think Daryl wants a captain. I think Daryl is the captain. Thinks that's how he runs his. You talk to enough players that have played for Daryl in LA and San Jose and Calgary and other places as a coach. I think he takes upon himself to do a lot of the routines of a captain. And I just think, he said in events this year that he thinks in a Canadian market, it's too difficult to be a captain. Hogwash. I think it's just the way he coaches teams. I think Michael Backland should be the captain of this team. I think Michael Backland should have been the captain of this team when Mark Giordano left, but nobody gave me a vote. So anyway, again, not a question, my friend, just me tilting at a windmill.
Yeah. I mean, I think when Daryl talked to us about not naming a permanent captain at the beginning of the season, I think his thought process was, I think he implied he wanted to be one of the guys who are, 30 and under contract for a while, because I see the point. Like, you've been in this market long enough to remember the constant, up until Jarome Iginla. Long-term fans will remember this, short-term fans won't. Before Jarome Iginla, it was basically a merry-go-round of temporary captains. Craig Conroy for a couple years, Lowry, Bobby Buchner, however many guys, Todd Simpson, Theo Fleury for 2 years. Like, pretty much since the Flames did away with the tri-captaincy after the '89 season, and I think they had Brad McCrimmon for a year, and then it was just, I think, the longest-term captain between the '89 team and the 2004 team was like 3.5 or 4 years of Joe Nieuwendyk. And then once he got traded, it was just a merry-go-round. And if you're someone and you want to have stability in your room, if you want to have continuity in terms of building a long-term leadership plan for your team, I get it. You probably want to have somebody who's going to be around for a while. It's like if you're running a business, you don't want to promote somebody who's going to be gone tomorrow. You want to be able to invest in that relationship. So I get it.
Okay, so let me stop you there. If it's not him, and I'm making you the general manager or the coach, whoever is going to appoint the next captain or pick the next captain, who do you see on this roster potentially as the next captain?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is it Dubé?
I don't know. I really think that Nazem Kadri has a lot of the attributes that would make him good at it. He's one of those guys where when they win, he comes out and says, "Here's why we win. Here's who deserves the credit." And if they lose, he says, "Here's why we lost. Here's how we need to do better." And I have a lot of respect for that. And I think that's externally, that's a lot of the job. Internally, I've never been on an NHL team, so I don't know what the role is like being the buffer between the room and the coach. And even in a Daryl Sutter team, is there much of a buffer? Is there a buffer necessary?
You have to be able to stand up to Daryl. You have to be able to go into Daryl's office and push back. I'm not.
I think that's how they chose the guys in LA. I mean, the guys in LA, were very strong voices in that room, and it worked. But I mean, I think one of the if we're going to get all macro here, I think one of the big challenges the Flames organization had post 2004 was trying to replicate what worked in 2004 into a completely different hockey environment. Yep. And in the same lens, I think it'd be very challenging to try to replicate what worked in LA in the 2010s to now.
I agree. I agree.
But I think that's the challenging part, especially coming out of if we're going to be blunt here, coming out of a pandemic situation where they had a year where the guys never hung out or very much, and it was such a tough situation that from a team building standpoint, are they behind the eight ball? Granted, a lot of teams were, but especially with the amount of changeover that has gone on in the group, do they know each other well enough?
My only argument to that is, and I don't find fault with anything you're saying, but you're the one that brought up the macro. Nobody had a problem giving Landeskog or McDavid the letter as teenagers. Like, I think we get way, I think, and I might be guilty of it right now. We get way into our heads about this, and maybe I'm obsessing on something that doesn't need to be obsessed on, but I'm also accusing the other side. The other point of view is obsessing. You could have named the captain.
When Craig Conroy in 2003 went, he went to the coaching staff and said, "Give it to Jerome. He's the guy. It's his time."
What happened?
That's the mythology that we've been given.
That is the public story, and that is the mythology. Not sure that's what happened.
But he was, Jerome was the obvious guy. He was the best player on the team. He had just won a gold medal. Like, he was, if you like, and I think that's where you go with, with Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid at 18, 19. He's not going to regress. He's not going to suddenly become,
But you didn't know he was a captain. Do you know what I'm saying? He's the best player on your team.
Yeah, I think that was the gamble. But even if you look at how he was in the OHL, he was always kind of, because of his ability to play, he was always a jump on my back, boys. Let's do this.
Sure, 100%. So is Landeskog.
And so is Iginla.
Yeah, absolutely. But Iginla, they took a little more time, but they also had Marty Gellin around him. They also had Craig Conroy around him. You also had
Rob McGear for a lot of his tenure.
Yeah, 100% he did. No. My point being is, again, just me. I don't own the team. I'm not the manager of the team, but I don't buy the captain. And I look at Backland this year, and I look at Backland last year, and I look at Backland next year. And to your point, 3 years isn't a bad run for a captain, especially if you've got one in-house. And maybe you do. Maybe it's Kadri, and you got him for what, 6 after this? Yep. So you could have given it. I get your point. I think you're wise to bring up the point of Huberdeau and Kadri need a year. I don't disagree with that at all. And if they put the captaincy on Kadri next year, then I'll once again look at this camera and go, guess what? I effed up again. I was wrong. and here's why I was wrong. But as I sit and watch Backland play right now, and I know how difficult it is to draft, develop, and have a player that's not a top 10 player, top 5 player, become what they're supposed to become, and then stay with your organization till the end of time. Do I think Backland's going to retire as a Flame? No. Do I wish he would? Yep. Because I think it's a great story. And maybe all I'm doing is fanboying out to Michael Backland today, Piker. That might be all I'm doing.
I think he deserves it, though. I mean, he's one of those guys that, I put him, granted, I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has had a little bit more, fanfare and ballyhoo up north than Backland has out here. And I think Nugent-Hopkins probably gets the recognition outside that market a bit more than Backland does. Right. But I mean, if you look back at sort of all the things that have worked for the Flames over this generation, let's say since 2014, a lot of it stems from him being that stabilizing force and working, and sort of the same reason why a lot of what the blue line worked for so many years with Giordano, where Giordano, even when he wasn't Norris level Giordano, he was always very good, and he could cover up a lot of deficiencies that other players had.
Yeah, no, I very good conversation, by the way. I'm glad we had this one. I'm glad we went down the path, because it's one that I chew in my brain a lot. Let me bring you to the other one that I chew a lot about. You referenced him, and he's actually the guy that started this conversation. Rasmus Andersson coming out yesterday after the game and talking about the impact of Michael Backland. Where if I gave you a shekel and I said you can place your shekel on 3 options. One option is he is what he is. This is what he's going to be, a really good, playoff, non-playoff team, but a really good, top 3, but not spectacular. All-star or Norris Trophy candidate? Where are you putting your shekel?
For Andersson?
Yep.
I think there's still room for him to grow. I don't think he's topped out yet. I
don't think he has either.
I don't know if he's going to be a Norris level guy. He wouldn't surprise me, but I think he probably settles out
the way that Giordano became one, right? Because
Giordano's a unicorn. I mean, nobody gets better after they turn 30. And a lot of times when you get the letter on your chest,
you're right.
It wears on you a bit. So Mark Giordano is a friggin' unicorn. Yeah. But I mean, I think you can look at a lot of how guys develop. I mean, they've been really cautious and very like, he was a guy, I had a long conversation with Brad Treliving about Rasmus Andersson a while ago. Mm-hmm. And, he mentioned, when you're drafting, you try to find deficiencies you can work around. And they loved everything about him except he wasn't in great shape. And they're like, cool. Well, Ryan Van Asten's here. We can figure that out. And, they publicly challenged him at a development camp that he just wasn't in great shape. And he went home and he worked his ass off. And, his girlfriend, I believe fiance, I don't know if they're married yet, but his partner is really into health and nutrition. That's been a good thing for him because he's gotten, he's progressively gotten better and better every year. Right. And there's a level of confidence with him in the puck. I mean, very rarely do you see defensemen score shorthanded goals because very rarely do they have the gumption to jump into a rush like he did and say, pass me the puck. I know we're shorthanded, but I have a shot open.
So you monitor anybody?
Yeah, but
it's a historical reference, right?
Oh yeah, it's a level of swagger that he didn't have in his game. Right. He's always had some cockiness in his game, for better or for worse. But having that kind of that awareness, that swagger, that certain amount of killer instinct to say, "Boom, we're doing this right now." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what the French would call, I don't know what.
I don't know what. Yeah, no, but okay.
He's one of those guys that I think he's still such a sponge for learning from guys that I think, give him another summer. And I think he's going to find another level. I don't know when he's going to top out, but right now he's a good to very good first pairing guy on this team, especially offensively. And, if the Flames had a better power play, like if they had a little bit more luck, a little bit more pizzazz in their power play, imagine how good Anderson's numbers were. Because they have a bottom third power play right now.
Yep.
And his numbers are still pretty impressive.
When I don't know, and it really doesn't have much to do with this argument because we're talking about the player as he is now. And I agree with you. He has room to grow. But I remember one of the first times that I ever learned about player usage and how the eye test sometimes isn't the be all end all was Dion. And that, Dion was getting a lot of credit as a rookie of the year. And he was getting a lot of, maybe he should be in the Norris Trophy. And then Jim Playfair took me aside and said, well, he's hidden. We hide him. When did, what was the evolution like for Rasmus Andersson and his usage? I mean, because I'm assuming he's getting, top situations right now at the same rate that a Chris Tanev is. Am I close?
Pretty close. And I think for Rasmus, it helps that right now, like I think switching Weegar and Hanifin was a nice move to sort of balance things out because Hanifin has a lot of offensive mindset to his game, and he's playing with Tanev now, Tanev's good at everything, but Tanev is just such a good defensive defenseman. Like he's a sponge in that way. And Mackenzie Weegar is quietly having one of the best shutdown defender years in the NHL. I mean, his offensive game is.
I'm sorry, what? Are you serious?
Mackenzie Weegar, his defensive metrics in terms of nothing happens for the other team for the most part when he's on the ice. Granted, he still has that what Brad Treliving would call the big mistake. Where occasionally, but he has the puck a lot. He's on the ice a lot against good teams, and he's a negator. Like nothing tends to happen for the other team. And playing him, someone who's so good at the defensive side of the game with Andersson, I think covers up the parts of Anderson's game that he's not exceptional at.
Right.
And so you have that balance.
Right.
And it gives you the ability to sort of put them in stronger head-to-head matchups against the other team's best guys. I mean, we've seen a lot of Backland's line and Uyghur and Anderson up against the other team's top dogs, and it works because the Backland line is very good at maintaining possession, but the fact that they're so good at that allows them to give Uyghur a bit more ozone time, give Anderson a bit more ozone time, and if things go back the other way, you have your 2 or 3 best forecheckers amongst the forwards to help out too. So I mean, they do that, but I think it's a situation where Daryl tends to go strength versus strength matchups as much as he can. And so I think doing strength versus strength with a strong two-way forward line with them really allows them to thrive in that situation.
I didn't realize he was among league leaders. I really didn't. So that's an interesting observation.
He's going to get the big challenge with the Norris is tends to be the
points
guys who score a lot who aren't batted away from the puck too. If Mackenzie Uyghur can figure out the offensive side of his game over the next couple seasons, like he's signed for like 100 million years or 7 I think. If he can build out that part of his game a little bit, and I think playing with Anderson as much as he's going to will help him. I think we talk about how much potential Anderson has, and Anderson has a ton of potential. I think he's starting to really realize it. Mackenzie Uyghur is one of those guys that he's going to start emerging as one of those, like he's been a best kept secret for a while. When the Flames got him, a lot of the folks in the analytics circles were like, "Ooh, that's a good pickup." I bet you they're data guys were like, "Make sure you get that guy." But in a year or two, he's not going to be a best kept secret anymore.
No. One last one for you. Speaking of best kept secrets, here we've been doing this program almost for a month now, and I'm not sure that I've ever uttered the word Calgary Wrangler. But they clinched a playoff spot. They're playing out of the Dome. There's a lot to like about this team. Give me your thumbnail sketch of. I think it's quiet if you're just casually observing. I think someone like yourself, this is not a shock and not a surprise, but this is a really good season that Mitch Love's team's put together.
And I'll give them. Let's give them a lot of credit here. So last year, the Stockton Heat were a powerhouse. Like they had Mackey, they had Valimaki, they had the best goalie in the league. They had Phillips, they have Pelche, they had Zar. Like they had a lot of guys, and they had a lot of veteran players. Like they had Luke Philp and Justin Kirkland and guys like that. Like they had a really good mix of established AHL guys who could play in the NHL and had, along with a bunch of young guys, and it worked. And they went on and they lost in 6 games in the conference final round to the eventual Calder Cup champions, the Chicago Wolves. And so then you lose a bunch of guys in free agency because a lot of these guys, Glenn Godden, went to, I believe, to Anaheim, Luke Philp went to Chicago, and so on and so forth. Like they lost a lot of those established guys and they had to replace them. And after they replaced them, you don't know how it's going to come together. They got off to a slow start, and they're number 1 in points in the entire AHL. They're number 2 in points percentage, which is actually because the teams all played different numbers of games. That's how they determine it. But by any metric, they're the 1 or 2 team in the league after changing over probably about a quarter of their roster. They haven't had Walker Duehr for the last month and a half because he's in Calgary. They haven't had Philip or Jacob Pelche for about 60 days because he's been up here. They haven't had Dennis Gilbert. Like they lost a lot of their best players and kept on rolling along. A lot of that is because of their goaltender's exceptional. To use a Jay Feaster's phrase, Dustin Wolf is probably the best goaltender not in the NHL right now. If you look at his numbers, he's probably going to be, if not the outright winner, a strong contender for the Baz Bastian Award for the American League's Goalie of the Year. He won it last year. 2 prior seasons there, he won the Western League's Top Goaltender Year Award. So he's going to be the best goalie in the league he's playing in for 4 seasons in a row. That's insane. No one ever does that. And so if you have goaltending, it gives you the ability to do a lot of things. But for a team without a lot of starred blue liners, they've had some growing pains from Jeremy Poirier and Yan Kuznetsov. They're making steps. Ilya Solovyov is he doesn't have a lot of upside at the NHL level. He's probably a 3rd pairing NHL guy. He's a 2nd, 3rd pairing guy at the AHL, but he's a black hole for scoring chances for the other team. Like nothing happens when he's on the ice, for better or for worse. And those guys are hard to find. If you're a minor league team and you just want to, calm things down, you throw him on the ice. They're getting, we've talked a lot about Jacob Pelche. He's graduated. We talked about Matthew Phillips. He's still top 5 in the league in scoring. Connor Zary is quietly one of the best stories in the Flames system because he missed a good chunk of last year with a few injuries. Poor guy broke his ankle or his foot blocking a shot in a preseason game, a prospect game 2 days before the preseason was opening. He got knocked out. Wasn't really completely on his game until about Christmas or January of last year. So he basically only had half a season. He was really good in that half a season, and he's been as good this season in a full season as he was last year in his half a season. And they have a lot of things like that. A lot of guys, Ben Jones has been a really good ad for the Wranglers. Cole Schwent has been sort of hot and cold, but he's starting to get going again. Emilio Peterson is a little bit of a beguiling player because of his consistency and lack thereof. But when he's on, like he's very, very good when he's on. And it's an interesting mix of guys. And they have some guys who they haven't really seen a lot of at the AHL level this year because they've been so jam-packed with players. Rory Cairns is currently injured in the ECHL. He was, I believe, second or third in the OHL in scoring a year ago. But they have too many players, the Wranglers. I think the exciting thing for me is, can the Wranglers keep this going? I have no reason to expect they can't, but can they keep this thing going? And what happens if the Flames don't make the playoffs? They're going to get Duer and Pelche back. Yep. They're potentially going to get some players from the other junior leagues back. The Flames have quite a few players that have qualified for the playoffs in the Canadian Hockey League's 3 branches. They're not all going to play until the championship. I mean, Seattle is probably going to play into the Memorial Cup because that's how they're built. Everyone else, it wouldn't shock me to see them wear Wranglers sweater before the end of their run. And, if you're a hockey fan, you're going, dang, the Hitmen are in the fight of their lives for a playoff spot. They still might make it. The Wranglers are a safe bet. The Flames still might make it too. But if you're looking to see some hockey potentially into May and June, I wouldn't bet against the Wranglers because, they have a lot of things going for them.
And they're good, and I think they're going to get support. I think if the other 2 teams aren't playing, I think hockey fans will find their ways, and some people might see their first Wrangler games in the postseason. But you know what a mausoleum Stockton was? There was no energy there. So, and I swear that in a 6-game series against Chicago, having a crowd behind is going to make a difference in a series like that. So they could be on a long run here.
Yeah, and even just the idea that you have access. I mean, if you're a Wranglers player, you can sit in the stands and watch a Flames practice. You can see what Backland does day to day without having to be on the team. You can see what Toffoli does with a shot. You can see a lot of those little things that can turn a slump into not a slump and a streak into a long streak just by being around the Flames, just hanging out and being around them. So that's it's a very interesting time for that group.
Good stuff, my friend. What's going on in Flames Nation? Today's mailbag day. What else should we expect this week?
Oh, we got a bunch of stuff. We got breakdowns of Nick Ritchie's game coming up. We got breakdowns of Coronado watch is well underway. Harvard has a very interesting weekend coming up where they'll most likely get invited to the national championship tournament. They'll play weekend after this coming weekend, and then who knows? And so I'm working on a piece to just look at the balancing act the Flames have, because if you're a Flames fan, if you're hoping to see Coronado, you might not be cheering for wins, because if we're being honest here, the sooner the Flames are a little bit out of it, the easier it is to put a 20-year-old kid in.
Yep.
And if you think you're a mistake away from making or not make the playoffs, maybe you don't want to put a 20-year-old in. And I think if you're the player, that weighs on your mind. If you're the team, it probably weighs on your mind a bit.
Good stuff, pal. Appreciate this. We will catch up with you again next Monday. As always, thanks for all of your help and the great conversation, because there was a lot of cool things we got to today. Thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me, man.
You betcha. There you go. That is Ryan Pike from Flames Nation. By the way, we are live in the Oodle Noodle studio. Local, love, delicious. Since opening their first store back in 2005, Oodle Noodle has been all flavor and just the right amount of weird. 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest and in Airdrie, 105 Main Street North, pickup and delivery. I forgot to mention today's reading assignment. I thought it was interesting. A little bit flag wavy, but worth it. Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic wrote a piece called "If Team USA will be handcuffed by pitching restrictions, why is it even worth playing in the WBC?" So the U.S. got beat up by Mexico yesterday. I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, Canada's going through it. Anybody with a Major League Baseball pitcher prospect, your hands are tied here at the World Baseball, as they should be because of the timing of everything. But I just picked that one out today. So if you want, and if you are an Athletic subscriber, because it is a subscription, check it out. That's Kenny Rosenthal. If Team USA will be handcuffed by pitching restrictions, why is it even worth playing in the WBC? We started this show today without a theme song. I have decided that's it. That's all. We are going to have a theme song for this podcast starting on Wednesday. Tune in Wednesday. I have something I think you're going to want. Well, I hope you're going to want to hear it. I hope you're going to want to hear it. All right, let's get into the final mile, shall we? This one's a little personal, but I'll start there. Kudos to the players of the Calgary Hitmen, including Riley Fiddler-Schultz, their captain, and assistant captain Sean Shigell. It was Bret Hart's game on Saturday afternoon. They got shellacked in a back-to-back with Red Deer. They beat Red Deer and then lost 9-0 at home. But yesterday morning, 8 o'clock on as we all know, spring ahead, the entire team showed up at Max Bell 2 and skated with our Superheroes program. There's a connection between Superheroes and the Calgary Hitmen. The Hitmen players have helped the last two teams get their equipment and get them all fitted and everything as kind of a community outreach. And this is the second time that the Hitmen have come skated with the Superhero players. The second Sunday they've had off. So both Sundays they've had off this year, they've come down early in the morning and skated with the kids. It's important. It really is. It makes a difference. You can go on my social media, Heroes Hockey social media. There's lots. The Hitmen have some great social media posts. Why this is important, but I just want to tip my hat to the leadership group. There's lots of reasons why that team could have begged off or not shown up yesterday, but they showed up in mass early, and I really do appreciate that. I wrote about this on LinkedIn today. Need your help. This is a call for volunteers. This is a call for help. I have proudly had the opportunity to work alongside the Calgary Booster Club on some events in my time here. And the Booster Club is now heading into their 70th year of promoting not only sport, but sport leaders and athletes, in particular high school sports and volunteer coaches, Olympians, you name it. Their annual gala highlights the male and female athletes of the year. They have an award for the Special Olympian of the year. They hand out thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarship to high school athletes and to Olympic athletes. And they've done so for many years, but they also keep the legacy of sport in our city alive. They're a great group, but they need to pass the baton. They want to pass the baton. There's a lot of people who, haven't seen all 70 years, have seen the last 50 or so, and they put in their time. And, as we know, it's difficult sometimes to keep service clubs alive. And I wouldn't necessarily call the Booster Club a service club, but they have a long, rich history, but, and they've got a little bit of new blood in there, but really are looking for Calgarians who want to promote sport, Calgarians who want to kind of keep the history alive, really. It's about the legacy of what amateur sport has done in our community. All sports, really, what's done in our community. Check them out. Check out their website, Calgary Booster Club. They're always looking for volunteers. They have events. They have some fundraising goals. But more importantly, think about how you can be part of that group. I know that what I love about young people now is they want to give back. They feel that they have a role and a responsibility to be part of our community and be on boards and things like that. So this is a call out to those who really want to help keep the legacy of sport in our city and keep the Booster Club's work alive in this day and age. Check them out online or go to my LinkedIn page. You can find the story on it and you can get the link there. But I'm really looking for some people to step up and help us Again, I'm not really affiliated. I've just hosted some events for them. But I believe in what John Jewell does. I believe in Don Buchanani. There's some great. Stan Schwartz has been around that group. I'm going to miss some names, so I'm not going to go too much farther. But we're talking about people in their 70s and their 80s who have been involved with the Booster Club for 50, 60 years. And it's time now to pass that baton on to a new generation and grow it out. There's all kinds of opportunities to grow out the legacy of sports in our city. Okay, that will do it. Thanks to Mike Board from the Calgary Roughnecks. Thanks to Ryan Pike from FlamesNation. Coming up on Wednesday, Trent McClellan from this hour has 22 minutes. Calgary comedian. He's a big, huge Flames fan, a big, huge hockey fan. So we'll talk to him. Cheryl Bernard. Yes, that Cheryl Bernard, a Hall of Famer. From the Hall of Fame, and also working on a really cool event that's coming to our city next year. And we're going to put the call out and tell you how you can get involved. On Friday, I will be in Ottawa, but I will join the show as a guest. Danny Austin is going to be your host on Friday. Danny Austin will host this program coming up on Friday. And a week from today, Kelsey Snow, live in studio with us as well. So we got a lot going on. Thanks to Gavin today and Mark. We got a little problem fixed there. We got Bordy on. So I appreciate everybody's efforts. Have a great Monday, everybody. We shall see you soon.